Okay, so this is a 1999 and question number 4. So it's an older stats problem, but very, very applicable. And actually, we are only approaching what would have been parts A and C on the College Board. You're like, well, we have A, B, C, and I'll explain that in a moment. But we're not doing part B that College Board had. So a company is trying to choose one of two plans for monitoring the strength of exercise band that it manufactures. If the manufacturing process is working properly, the strengths of the exercise bands are normally distributed. There's that word that we might be using the table, z-scores, all of that should be going through our mind, drawing pictures with a specified mean. And standard deviation. Assume the manufacturing process is functioning properly. Okay, quality control plan 1 calls for rejecting an exercise band as defective if its strength falls more than 2 standard deviations below the mean. All right. Quality control plan 2 calls for rejecting an exercise band as defective if the strength falls more than 1.5 interquartile ranges below the lower quartile of the specified plan. All right. So basically, that's the method, the Q1 method. So what proportion of the bands will be rejected by Plan 1? Well, Plan 1 was rejecting if it were 2 standard deviations below. So I'm thinking about this and I go, all right, what does that mean? Drawing my picture. And I noticed they didn't give me a mean. They didn't give me a mean or anything like that, but they said 2 standard deviations. Well, I know that my z-scores are centered at 0, and I want 2, so I'm looking for the probability that it's less than -2. All right, so the probability that z is less than -2, that's my drawing, that's my picture. And by the way, while these are not necessarily required for credit, they often give you credit for if you have a minor error. And sometimes they'll take a minor error and say, you know what, because their drawing is explicit, we understand this is just a mathematical, and they oftentimes will give you full credit if you have a good drawing. Believe it or not, that would be considered a good drawing. We're not looking for artwork. You don't have to be skilled at this. If I can do it, you guys definitely can, because you much better penmanship and stuff than I have. So I look up my -2 on the z-score and I see 0.0228. So the probability, the percentage that I expect to lose is 2.28%. Now, some people would choose to approach this by the empirical rule. And the empirical rule says this. And by the way, if you did the empirical rule, I would highly recommend that you draw a picture so that people know that that's where it came from. All right. So if you did the empirical rule and you said 0.95, then you go, okay, this area is 0.025, this area is 0.025. And the way I did that was just 1 minus the 0.95 equals 0.05. And because it's symmetric, I have the same amount of area in the two tails. All right. Well, this is what I'm interested in, is any value below this 2. All right. Well, there it is, 0.025. And if you had done that, that would also provide you with full credit. Okay. So empirical rule, but if you use the empirical rule, state it. And if you don't state it, you have to have that drawing. You can't just do it and say, oh, the numbers. Either you're going to say by empirical rule and show your work like this, or you're going to draw the picture. All right. But you have to have something to let us know that it was done by empirical rule. Okay, part B. They actually didn't ask for what is a z-score associated with rejection for Plan 2. Mrs. Lamb is nicer than I was going to be. I was going to make you go straight to part C and do that all together, but we added the part B so that you'd have a step to get to part C, and that was Mrs. Lamb's suggestion to make things more accessible, to step you up to the answer. And I thought you had a good comment since we're earlier in the year. All right. So quality control plan 2 calls for rejecting an exercise band as defective if it falls more than 1.5 interquartile ranges below Q1. All right. So I just wrote down Q1 minus 1.5 IQR because that's what they said. I need to show them that I know what IQR is. And you're like, okay, where did you get those values? Well, that's a good answer. That's a good question. This happens to represent 0.75 Q3, and Q1 happens to represent 0.25. So I can go look up those probabilities, all right? I can go look up those probabilities. So 0.25 is less than 50%, so I know I'm going to be on the negative table. And there's my 25%, or as close as I could get to 25% on the table. And that's at negative 6.7. So 6.0, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's a z-score of negative 0.67. So this would be my Q1 value. My Q1 value is negative 0.67, or that's my z-score associated. On the upper side, looking up 75%, this is my closest value. All right, this is close, but this is a little bit closer. So positive 0.67. All right, that's my value. Now some of you are going, hey, they're symmetric. Couldn't I just, if I found one, swap it? Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things, if you were drawing this chart, and you go, okay, this is 0.25, z-score is 0. This is negative 0.67. You would as soon as you look that up, you should be able to go, you know what, on the upper side, 0. The upper 25% would be positive 0.67. All right. But the table works left to right, so you're looking at 0.75. All right. So this is your Q3. This would be a Q3 chart. This would be a Q1 chart. Plugging into the formula, my z-score is negative 0.67 minus the 1.5, my IQR of 1.34, gives me a value of negative 2.68. So if you got a z-score of negative 2.68, you'd go look it up on the table. Negative 2.6, 20, 21, 23, 24, 25, 26, all the way to 8, we end up with 0.0037, negative 2.68. And that gives me my 0.0037, all right? Now, I want to talk to you about this real quickly. Some of you are going, I couldn't get this answer, so I couldn't do this. On a test, on the AP exam, you should have known that this had to be a negative z-score. And generally speaking, if you'd come up with a negative z-score of any, or you just put a negative z-score, I put -3, I didn't even show work. I got no credit for that part. But when you looked up -3 and you correctly gave that response, you would have gotten credit for that part. So part B would have been wrong, but part C, you can still get part C. So even if a question builds on itself, answer everything and then just refer to your answer above, and you can still get credit for the part below, even if it is incorrect. I'm going to